Greetings, spiritual seekers. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we delve into a topic that is both profound and transformative, the nature of suffering in spiritual awakening. Before we embark on this insightful journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell icon to stay updated with our spiritual explorations. What exactly is suffering? It's a question that has echoed through the corridors of human existence. Suffering takes many forms: emotional pain, mental anguish, and physical distress. In the context of spiritual awakening, we not only seek to understand suffering but also unravel how we, as humans, create unnecessary suffering for ourselves and others. Much of our suffering arises from resistance to what is. We resist change, we resist pain, and we resist the inevitable flow of life. This resistance creates friction that intensifies our suffering. We become entangled in a web of shoulds and shouldn'ts, fighting against the very nature of existence. Suffering is what we humans create for ourselves and others due to the misusing of the human mind. Misusing the mind is what causes people to suffer unnecessarily. Not because the mind is a bad thing. The human mind is a very powerful tool that humans have for navigation and assistance, but it turns out that the same tool is using people to create pain for themselves and others. It is more likely that if you create suffering for yourself, you are eventually going to make other people suffer as well. That is obvious. These two go together. As Eckhart Tolle says, if you make other people miserable, it is because it all starts by making yourself miserable first before you project that suffering onto others. That is how dysfunctional humans are. It's the human condition. What can we say? Don't deny it. You might have done this at some point in your life. It's much easier to notice suffering from people around you than noticing it to yourself. Meaning, you can suffer without knowing it yourself. As I have said before in the previous videos, that suffering is a generic term. It can be in the form of anger, frustration, depression, anxiety, self-pity, and so on. All of these painful emotions are not the result of outside situations. They are being caused by your thoughts, the ability to resist or deny the isness of the present moment. 95% of your suffering isn't caused by the outside situations. It is caused by your mind, by always judging and resisting what is. That is the main source of unhappiness, not the outside circumstances. Moreover, we often find ourselves trapped in the labyrinth of the mind. Identification with our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions forms a web that tightens around us. We forget that we are not our thoughts, we are the awareness behind them. This identification breeds unnecessary suffering as we become slaves to the incessant chatter of the mind. You might be asking yourself a question. How does suffering arise? Well, it arises because the present moment is always treated like an enemy. The constant need to judge, resist, deny, or fight the isness of what is exactly what creates suffering in the first place. It is not you who is resisting the present moment. The mind is. The true you is just there accepting whatever is unfolding at this very moment. Psychological time is one of the aspects that play a role in human suffering. Most people's suffering arises because they are still identified with psychological time. This is the act of mentally projecting yourself into some imagined moment to see yourself free from this present moment. If it's a future imagination, it's a construct of the things that may or may not be true. If it's a past imagination, it is also a construct of the things that have happened or not happened. Most of the time, it's the imagination of things or events that may not be true, but used to escape the isness of what is. People get trapped in psychological time because they want to be in some future or past moment that never comes or exists because it's a delusion that this present moment is somehow an obstacle. People who suffer from depression, anxiety, fear, lack, impatience, frustration, or any other form of suffering are completely trapped in psychological time because they are mentally projecting into some future or past moment because for them this moment is a threat to their existence. They would rather create suffering for themselves than acknowledging this moment for what it is. For example, people recreate the suffering caused by the events that happened in their past by basically ruminating about those events in their minds over and over again. Instead of accepting and acknowledging what has happened in the past, people recreate these past events in their minds, thought after thought, to reaffirm their addiction to suffering. This is being done by imagining the past over and over again, programming the body to live in the past even if nothing is happening now. The opposite is true for a person who suffers from lack, impatience, anxiety, or fear. A person who mentally projects into some future moment rather creates suffering for themselves because they are constantly worrying about what will happen in the so-called future. They are constantly worrying about what if this thing happens, what if I don't get successful, and why is this taking so long? These types of thoughts arise because they are mentally projecting into the future because it's a belief that this present moment is somehow an obstacle. They will rather contemplate the future which may never come, and even if it comes in reality, why create the suffering before the actual event? With the power of your presence, you would deal with it rather than create suffering before the experience. That's how people create misery for themselves with psychological time, because they believe that the present moment is the enemy of their existence. Another aspect that leads to suffering is attachment and clinging. Attachment to desires, outcomes, and a specific vision of the future can lead to suffering. Spiritual teachings often emphasize the importance of non-attachment, as clinging to transient aspects of life can result in disappointment and a sense of unfulfillment. Attachment often involves forming specific expectations about how things should unfold. When reality doesn't align with these expectations, individuals experience disappointment. The greater the attachment, the more intense the disappointment, as the gap between expectation and reality widens. To free yourself from suffering is to live at ease and in harmony with what is. In other words, the beginning of true freedom and peace is to surrender completely to the present moment and accept what arises in the present moment without any judgments. Whether the suffering is created by your mind or the outside circumstances, you drop all the inner resistance to what is, even if you don't like what's happening. The presence that you already are is the acceptance, and it doesn't judge or complain, but accepting things as they are, whether good or bad. A lot of people are suffering because they are constantly living through psychological time, day in and day out, without even a slight of acknowledging the present moment for what it is. If you are not in the present moment, you are either in your mind or stuck in some psychological past or future, and you are creating unnecessary suffering for yourself. This is because suffering and psychological time are inseparable. When you are suffering means that you are trapped in psychological time. The only time you are not suffering is when you are fully in the present moment. To dissolve psychological time is to live fully in the present moment without trying to project mentally into some imagined future or past moment where you will be free and complete. True freedom is when you fully acknowledge the present moment for what it is, because the present is all you will ever have. As Eckhart Tolle says, your life always unfolds in the present moment, and there was not a time when your life is not now. When you remember the past, you are remembering it in the present moment, and when you think about the future, you are also doing it now, because everything is happening right now, not in the future or past. Make the present moment your friend instead of making it your enemy. Be friendly with it and see how your life flows with ease and harmony. Rather than seeing yourself in the so-called future where you will be free and happy, and this can be in the form of being successful, seeing yourself having material possessions, seeing yourself done with a particular activity, and more. Align fully with the present moment to see that you are already complete and free right now, because all of your problems are in the past or future, not at this moment. You only get challenges in life, not problems. The problems arise in your mind because the mind is resisting what is. Not because the mind is bad for doing that. That's how it was programmed. It was conditioned to live in denial of what is. You are not the one who is resisting the present moment. You are that which accepts what is arising in the present moment, not resisting, judging, or complaining. You don't even have to force your mind to accept the present moment because the mind is just doing its own thing and you are there observing it as well. This isn't about fighting the mind so that it can stop. The mind has that tendency to judge itself because it wants to be perfect in a situation and to acquire acceptance. And acceptance is what you already are. Firstly, don't judge the event that caused the mind to react in the first place. And secondly, don't judge what the mind is saying about the situation. Both of these are just events. Whatever happens, you treat it as just an event. Whatever the mind says about what happens, you also treat it as just an event. We are not trying to get the mind to stop because you cannot stop the mind from doing its own thing. Just observe it and don't believe it. This moment is completely free from all problems and suffering. So, make it your biggest friend instead of resisting it as if it does not exist. Wherever you are or what type of situation you are in, acknowledge your surroundings and be grateful for the aliveness in your surroundings that is already inseparable from who you are. Feel your body from the inside, look around your surroundings without concepts or judgments. Smell, touch things around you and sense the presence in your surroundings. In conclusion, the path to freedom from unnecessary suffering is paved with self-awareness, mindfulness, and compassion. As we awaken to the reality of what is, we find liberation from the self-imposed chains that bind us. If you resonated with today's exploration, give it a thumbs up, share it with fellow seekers, and let's continue this journey together. Thank you for joining us on this transformative ride. Until next time, may your path be illuminated with wisdom and the light of awakening. Namaste.